Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today we're returning to U.S. Andersen and continuing to read from the magical book, 3 Magic Words. Check out the first episode on U.S. Andersen for this book called The Lock. And today we're going to visit an amazing chapter from this book called Illusion. You don't need to listen to the first chapter. Each of these chapters has its own lesson, and there is a meditation at the end of this that you can come back to. We're talking about illusion and the way that evil is an illusion, and many of the problems we have in the world are illusions. As usual, U.S. Andersen's teachings are very powerful. Illusion by U.S. Andersen. Thy life is an image inexorably cast by the pictures that form in thy mind. And that which thou seest is that which thou hast. Seest evil, and evil is thine. Evil, the great illusion. As the first step in our discussion of evil, let us sensibly get rid of both the devil and hell. Make up your mind that the intelligence that exists behind the universe does not destroy itself. The pain-ridden idea of hellfire as a place of punishment for sin is man's own morbid idea. Evil is man's own morbid idea. Disease and suffering are man's own morbid ideas. God does not know of the existence of these things. Since he created man free, he has left it up to man to conceive his own situations, and man has thought into existence all evil. It is ego-absorption that colors everything in terms of good and evil. Never was this brought home to me more thoroughly than in the pre-dawn hours on the bridge of a destroyer on patrol in Nasugbu Bay, Philippine Islands during World War II. A 40mm shell had just struck the chest of a Japanese attacking in a suicide boat. He seemed so close that I might have reached out and touched his hand. The shell exploded and he disintegrated before my eyes. The scene was seared into my mind. Throughout the battle, it kept insinuating itself. This was the first violent death I had witnessed during the war. Surely, this was an evil thing that a man should die at the hands of other men. Yet a great cheer had gone up when he had been killed. Had he managed to drive his explosive-laden boat into the side of our ship, we would have died instead. So we took his life and rejoiced. But was not that evil to him? Certainly his family, friends, and loved ones did not rejoice. Surely they were overtaken by the despair that everyone calls evil. Good for us, evil for him. We rejoice. His family members despair. But was it good or evil? Was there even cause for rejoicing or weeping? Who judges? Whose judgment is adequate? As we skirted the coast of Samar next night, I stood on the fantail of the ship and watched the wake spreading on the sea like a path of frost in the moonlight. Some of the night and the stillness seemed drawn into me. Then the word came. I felt the joy of discovery. It was only the viewpoint of the absorbed and limited ego that caused the appearance of evil. Evil was partial knowledge. To God, in whom was all knowledge, evil was non-existent. And what I had witnessed in the death of the attacking Japanese had been simply the resolution of forces by which God was evolving truth through man. There was no victor, no vanquished, no evil. All was God moving toward manifestation of his perfection. With new insight, I recalled the words of Khalil Gibran. Only then shall you know that the erect and the fallen are but one man standing in twilight between the night of his pygmy self and the day of his God self. Evil is the great illusion of all mankind. Religious thought of all ages has seldom offered more than a stumbling solution to this enigma, for nearly all religions offer a kindly and loving God who yet has created evil and is tempting man with it. Now it is obvious that there is nothing kindly or loving about a God who visits disease and pain and poverty and suffering upon his children, any more than there is anything beneficent about a deity who creates evil so that he can burn in hell those he manages to tempt with it. The very plain fact is manifest. If God is a God of love, he did not create evil. And so with the entire hideous conception of the devil and hell. If God created the devil and hell, he would have to know that. He was going to send some of his children there, and it even follows that he would have a pretty good idea who they would be. So that would give us a God who created the temptation, who created persons unable to resist it, and who pre-condemned them to an eternal residence in the furnaces of Satan. It is ridiculous, of course, yet the extremely important point is this. As far as man's earthly life is concerned, if he believes in evil, he experiences evil. If he believes in disease, he experiences disease. If he believes in hell and the devil, he suffers all the tortures they offer each time he falls from what his own mind considers to be grace. Man alone has created evil. All these things man creates into reality in his life on earth: evil, disease, poverty, hell, and devil, but God has nothing to do with them. Now we must understand what God is. God is obviously all wisdom and all knowledge. Since he knows everything, he never has any problems. There are never questions to answer, nor goals to be achieved. There is never knowledge to be gained, nor experience to be had. Everything to God is apparent. Each movement to God is automatically creation. Somehow mankind has insisted upon devising a God with a whole set of moral attributes. But since moral implies conflict with immoral, God couldn't possibly be either. He could not possibly be put in the position of wrestling himself with good and evil and creating that which for the moment gained the upper hand. It has to be understood that God only creates, and that he creates without the knowledge of good and evil. It has to be understood that each human being is a living embodiment of God, that God is in him and around him, and that each human being creates through thought. Morally, the world-conscious human being knows right and wrong and good and evil. Therefore, he creates them. He creates them with his own thought. He, we, all of us, not God. For the act of creation in this life is accomplished by the conscious mind, acting on the subconscious mind. And the universal subconscious mind is the mind of God. Mankind will never be able to accept an all-loving and just God who created evil. Mankind has never been able to reconcile such a God with the patent fact that disease and suffering fall like rain on the just and unjust. The thinking mind is emotionally torn to bits, even dwelling on such an idea. But we needn't think of it further, for it can be proven that disease and suffering and evil of every kind are created by man and man alone. The spirituality law of cause and effect, the startling but very apparent fact, is that we do not obtain to the good of life by being moral or righteous alone, but we obtain good by creating good, by the power of our faith and thought. As ye sow, so shall ye reap is one of the world's most veiled and misunderstood sayings. For centuries, religious belief has held that moral, ethical, and lawful misconduct of a man would be punished in the hereafter. Nothing could be further from the truth. This saying speaks only of the spiritual law of cause and effect. A seed sown in the garden of the mind shall reap the blossom thereof. For the subconscious mind is a garden, and like the garden of earth that knows only to cause things to grow, the garden of the subconscious mind knows only to create reality from the seed of thought. Whether this thought is immoral or immoral, ethical or unethical, has nothing whatever to do with the inexorable process involved. For the seed, having been planted, must grow, and grow it will, into physical fact, unless the seed itself is uprooted and another planted in its stead. freedom, the essence of mankind. Since we have likened mental processes to religious ones, and since we have said that God is the subconscious mind, and that the subconscious mind or God does not recognize the difference between good and evil, there will be those among you who will be quick to assume that a God who does not know that suffering and pain and disease and war and disaster are attacking his flock is little better than a God who purposely looses these forces upon them. Do not forget for an instant of a day in your life that you are free. That freedom is the most miraculous part of your existence. That freedom has allowed you to establish exactly what you are today and will allow you to establish exactly what you will be tomorrow. That freedom must allow you to obtain what to you is evil as well as good. Otherwise, it would not be complete freedom. The very essence of man's existence is a determination of what constitutes good and what constitutes evil, and the subsequent choice of the good. For the good makes for progress, and the evil retards progress, and the purpose of all mankind is progression and creation. Only by creating both good and evil can mankind judge the good and the road of progress. Even as you have nerves in your fingers, so that when you touch a hot stove, the pain keeps you from burning your hand off, so the pain physically, circumstantially, and emotionally of all evil is designed to keep you on the path of progress. God did not create the evil. He simply endowed you with the prime function to create. And he allowed you to create what you will. He endowed you with the instinct of survival and progress, so that when you create something contrary to your own good, the lesson should keep you from creating it again. But God made man only to create through thought. Beyond that, each man chooses his own road. Morality and spiritual law. It is a common misunderstanding that morality and ethics are at all times synonymous with good. Morality and ethics are man's conceptions of what is good, and in the main are right for any certain time and place, though they are constantly changing. But the irrefutable fact is that success and achievement and health and vigor are not directly the result of morality and righteousness. If they were, there would never be a maiden stricken by disease. There would never be a newborn babe with a crippled body. There would never be a poverty-stricken saint, nor a righteous failure. And the truth is that the world is full of all of these. So often you hear it said, "I can't understand why all this bad luck has overtaken me. I've never done anything to deserve it." Or someone will remark with horror, I work, and yet everything I do seems to fail." Or again, "I try so hard to do the right thing, and yet God always seems to be punishing me." Get those thoughts out of your mind. Bad luck doesn't overtake you. You create it. Success is not the result of hard work. It's the result of right thinking. God doesn't punish you. You punish yourself. Put the seed of failure in the subconscious mind, and it will develop failure for you. But the seed of disease in the subconscious mind, and it will develop disease for you. Put the seed of loneliness in the subconscious mind, and it will develop loneliness for you. Put the seed of unhappiness in the subconscious mind, and it will develop unhappiness for you. Evil, the tragic illusion. The importance of your neighbor. There is but one universal mind in which we all live and move and have our beings. There are billions of conscious minds thinking into the universal subconscious mind, creating a physical reality with each thought that is sped with complete belief. This universal mind is reactive, creative, and it can create for your neighbor what you think into it for him. Now consider that very carefully. The universal subconscious mind tends to create for your neighbor what you think into it for him. And it tends to create for you what your neighbor thinks into it for you. Love thy neighbor as thyself. For even as your neighbor regards you, so shall it tend to be done to you. Now, of course, you may be thinking of success, and your neighbor may be thinking of failure for you, and you may be successful, but only because the subconscious mind always acts. It always acts, and it acts on that thought behind which there is the most belief. Perhaps you haven't fully absorbed the idea of there being only one mind, one universal subconscious mind which we all use. Maybe point out to you the existence of thought transference, a phenomenon which can't be explained on any other premise than our all existing in the same ether or intelligence or mind. May we point out to you the existence of mental healing, done without any overt contact with the person being healed. May we point out to you intuition or insight, which enables a person to have the answer to a problem even though he has never figured it out. Even the infamous voodoo rites are not altogether superstition. Certainly the sticking of pins into a rag doll could never make any person sick, but the faith that accompanies such a pin sticking may cause a limb to wither, a fever to rise, a cure to effect itself, or a mountain to move. See no evil. Thought into the great, creative, universal subconscious mind plus faith can equal only one thing, and that is physical reality. It matters not whether the thought is good or evil. If the faith is there, it will manifest, for that is the law. Thought plus faith creates. Believe you will fail, and you will. Believe you will succeed, and you will. Believe you will be well, and you will be. Believe you will be sick, and you will be. Believe you are unloved, and you are. Believe you are unattractive, and you are. Evil could not be anything other than the result of man's belief. Observe the triad of the Orient. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Whence it follows, like the night, the day, there can be no evil. Stuttering mankind, grasping at the edges of truth since the ancient civilizations of the Orient, has never been thoroughly convinced that his belief could make his life godlike in beauty and abundance and harmony and achievement. Mankind struggled toward truth. We must in this chapter dispel all notions of evil as existing as a separate entity in this life. We must see evil as it really is, simply illusion, simply pain response, a wrong track taken, an experiment toward truth, but always illusion, a wrath-like ephemeral thing that dissipates like the fog at morning when it is denied. Evil as an existing reality, an entity separate and apart from man, has been taught since the beginning of recorded history. This fallacious assumption no doubt owes its origin to the fact that mankind has never been able to account for the occurrence of evil, which seems to follow no moral pattern, which falls on the just and unjust, the strong and the weak, the wise and the ignorant, the rich and the poor. Observing that a newborn child made its entrance into the world with a withered hand or an addled brain or a stunted leg, men mystically assumed that God must be punishing this child for the sins of his father. The sins of the father shall be visited on the son. How close to truth is this intuitive grasp of the law? It is not, however, the moral transgressions of the father that are visited upon the son. It is his errors of thinking, not only of the father, but of the father's brothers and of every individual who projects his thoughts into the creative mind of the universe. Only one cause. Just like everything that exists, there is a reason for evil. And just like everything that exists, there is a reason for the deformity of the newborn babe. Genetics may offer its cellular thesis that a defective chromosome in the egg or the sperm has blighted this young life. And indeed, it will be difficult to dispute that such a physical occurrence did actually take place. But why? That is what we are concerned with here. Everything on this earth is the result of thought. Now let us qualify that statement. This does not mean that everything has been created by thought. It simply means that everything has been created as a result of thought. The great universal plastic creative medium of the subconscious mind acts on all volitional thought that is placed there. The sum total of all life uses this mind. Every thought of every person who has ever lived has been indelibly recorded in this mind, which has been moved to action because of it. This mind attempts to manifest all thoughts to the person thinking it, and it also attempts to manifest it to all the world. Since everything in existence is the result of thought, all form maintains itself as long as the thought is held. As the thought changes, so does the form. Every newborn child is the result of thought, in form as well as substance. The event of conception being only a physical event in the chain of manifestation, as the carpenter nailing boards together is a physical event in the chain of manifestation of a house. The form must be the result of thought, and so with the newborn babe, it is therefore inescapably true that deformity in a newborn child is also the result of thought. Now, this may prove to be rather startling to you, as indeed no mother is likely to tolerate the premise that she has visited some deformity upon her child through a thought conception. But let us not forget that all thought is not consciously projected into the creative mind. A very great portion is projected by our buried pain remembrances, the insidious prompters of the subconscious mind. It is also true that thought conception of other persons than ourselves, nay, even every person who has ever lived, may show themselves in our experience. All life exists within one mind. In order to truly understand this, we must return once again to the universal subconscious mind. The mind we all use and live in. This mind or intelligence is not in man alone, but in every living thing. Behold the process of evolution, and you will see desire being projected into the universal mind and returning in physical reality. The fish experiences land and desires to walk and becomes a reptile. The reptile experiences air and desires to fly and becomes a bird. The reptile desires size and strength and becomes a horse. Bears, wolves, tigers, lions, snakes, everything that creeps and crawls and flies and swims and burrows and builds and desires, all are results of thought or desire projected into the universal creative mind of God. The fish has fins. The polar bear's fur is white. The chameleon changes colors to blend with the foliage. Every reaching desire of conscious life is answered from a great, inexhaustible source, without regard to suffering or good or evil, but simply an answer to conception and desire. Should the temperature of this earth drop 100 degrees, life would survive and adapt and evolve in different form. Should the earth and the planets fade away, life would survive and adapt, for desire is life, and life is change, and change is progress, and they all answer one immutable law. Deformity in the newborn babe may seem a hideous injustice as we view it in terms of our own selves and a kind of self-identification. Yet the distant future may hold a day when mankind in physical form will not need arms or even legs, or may occupy a form that today would be regarded with horror by everyone. For today our thought conceptions of ourselves are what we see in actuality, and we are so firmly convinced of the reality of this evidence and the permanence of it that we cannot conceive of change in any other light than monstrousness or deformity. The subconscious mind or God does not recognize suffering or pain or war or famine or disease. It recognizes only conception and desire, or thought and emotion, and it recognizes them only one way, by creating them into actuality. Thoughts and faith, sole responsibilities. There are only two things you can do for yourself. One is conception, and the other is conviction. All the work of creation rests with another than you, for no man is responsible for anything in this life except his thought and his belief. All else is the working of the great creative universal mind, beside which the largest atomic plant in the universe is like a gnat on the face of the earth. This power manifests evil as well as good, for it does not differentiate between the two. It simply creates according to image and conviction. Thus with all evil, God sendeth his rain on the just and unjust alike, for evil befalls the righteousness and the unrighteous, but it cannot visit him who sees and is convinced of nothing but good. Truth and error. The experience of evil and the selection of good is the path mankind must follow. Like everything else, this also has a reason. Good is truth, evil is error. The experience of error and the selection of truth are progress. When man knows all truth, will be God, for he will have arrived at the same position as God, and there no longer will be problems or searching, for everything will be known and apparent. Perhaps we in our lifetimes are not to approach this infinity. It seems, at least, like a gargantuan undertaking, with our little knowledge and our little faith, to presume to banish evil from our experience within the comparatively few short years allotted to us here on earth. But this much is a certainty. If we know that evil proceeds from thought, just as good proceeds from thought, we can establish eternal sentinel on our minds to guide our thoughts in the paths of good and progress. For even the ultimate is not impossible of attainment this very moment, could we but have the faith and have the image. Since good is truth and evil is error, it is then apparent that evil is illusion. Evil is a wrong road, a mistake, a pain experience, simply a search on the road toward truth. And since it is not truth, it is error. And since it is error, it is illusion. Being illusion, evil dissipates with consummate ease. It is replaced by good with almost miraculous speed. God can only be replaced by evil when the conception of good is very weak and the conception of evil is very strong. But truth does not lightly yield to error, while error has few defenses against the illumination of truth. For a man to know sufficient of truth to consciously exercise the power of the subconscious mind must necessarily deter him from exercising that power for the creation of evil. For all humanity searches for truth, and the truth once revealed will not permit error. Since truth is good and error is evil, the knowing of good forbids the choice of evil. Withholding spiritual knowledge. There have been many enlightened men who have lived on this planet. There have been societies of these enlightened men whose perception of the truth has been so acute that physical manifestation from thought transference, and intuition have been common in their daily lives. Yet these men and societies have usually thought it dangerous to reveal this knowledge to humanity as a whole. Mankind, however, has come a long way in the last 20 centuries. It is no longer a case of revealing truth to the unready, as a loaded gun might be handed to a child. For all humanity now reaches out for an answer to the great why of human existence, and is searching for peace and knowledge, though there is little doubt that the haphazard placing of mental power in the hands of the unready and ignorant could not help but have some negative effect on human progress. There is also no doubt but that mankind stands at the threshold of spiritual freedom this very day. It is not only needed and desired, it is veritably demanded by each person who lives that he gain access to the laws that govern his life, so that he may use them for his own benefit and the benefit of humanity as a whole. Truth can always be described. Many metaphysical treatises and some philosophical treatises deal with the outer world as though it were all illusion, and the only reality is submergence in self, a sort of letting go of consciousness to attain a sense of complete selflessness. This sense of absolute, however, has never been fully described, and such failure has been laid to inadequacy of the several hundred languages that are spoken by human beings. Truth must always be possible of description. Since it exists, it must be known, and when it is known, it can be described. All truth exists in some form somewhere. This does not mean that all physical circumstance is truth, but both good and evil manifest themselves. But illusion, the only illusion that exists in this life, or in the life of the spirit, is evil. Truth is reality, and reality can be described. Sin and punishment, cause and effect. Perhaps we are now better able to understand the ideas of sin and punishment. Sin is not a transgression against God or law in the sense of the violation of a moral code, nor is punishment a vengeance enacted by society or God upon the transgressor. Sin is simply error, and punishment is simply the inevitable result of error. If you are looking for a friend's house and you turn down the wrong street, you cannot expect to find your friend's house on that street. You have turned down the wrong street. Consequently, you will not find his house. Cause and effect, a law, that is all. So it is with all evil, which is error. That which you think good or evil will inevitably develop in your experience. If it is evil, it is error, and if it is error, the effect upon you must be evil. When you know that God is perfect, you will understand that God cannot err, and since evil is only error, God could not possibly be responsible for it. So evil is error, and is illusion, and is created by man in his search for truth, by his thought conceptions being projected into the universal creative mind or subconscious mind. From the experience of evil, man chooses truth. In other words, he progresses by a system of trial and error. Each error carries with its own consequences, since we are dealing with a law of cause and effect. Therefore, the consequences of error are born on this earth. They are not born in a hereafter. Each soul, returning into the subconscious mind from which it came, returns without moral stigma, without judgment of any kind, without praise or blame, without reward or punishment. For we all are branches on one great tree, which neither chastises itself nor destroys itself, but is simply contemplative and creative. Followers of certain religions which feature purgatory and damnation will now raise the point, well, if the pure and sinful are judged alike in the hereafter, what is the point of being good in our earthly lives? It seems highly objectionable to be restrained from the committing of evil simply because you wish to be rewarded with a harp in a nice cool place rather than a pitchfork where it is very warm. For this illusory promise of reward and punishment in the hereafter is a pale ghost alongside man's creative search for truth. You don't have to wait nearly so long as the doomsday to gain your punishment for evil. Steal your neighbor's purse and discover how soon your own is stolen from you. Kill your neighbor and discover how soon your own life is forfeit. That which you send out returns to you in this life, this now, this most important time that ever was, and it returns much sooner than you think. Remember this, remorsefulness is a sin against yourself. As a human being, you will make mistakes in arriving at truth. Do not allow remorse to become a prompter. Be joyful that error has disclosed truth. The tragic picture of men dragging through life, chastising himself for every mistake, making discouragement and shame his bedfellows, and even frightening himself into immobility through a hideous vision of punishment in hell is the source and cause of every prompter of the subconscious mind. To err is human. Evil is human, but evil is illusion, nothing more. It dissipates in front of good almost magically, and every error in your life is for the purpose of revealing truth to you and not to stultify your divinity in shame and remorse and fear. There will be evil in the world until man completes his progress to a oneness with God, for there will be error until all truth is known. You will make mistakes. You cannot live and not make mistakes. But this you can do. You can suffer the consequences of each mistake only once and no more. Let us face this very simple problem with the courage with which we are all naturally endowed. Let us not be afraid of making a mistake or suffering the consequences if the mistake is made. If you have a desire, let it manifest. Don't keep telling the subconscious mind, do, don't, do, don't, do, don't. Until, weary of moving back and forth, it lays the weight of its indecision on your shoulders with a burden no one in the world could bear. Say either do or don't, one or the other, for the subconscious mind is a vast army at your command, but it needs a clear-cut authoritative decision. What results then must be either truth or error. If it is truth, your whole life will be immediately bettered. If it is error, you will suffer a temporary punishment, a setback, but from the knowledge of truth thus gained, you have progressed. For this temporary setback, like the error that caused it, is simply illusion and is actually progress toward the realization of truth. Find a man who has suffered a score of defeats, and you will find a great soul. He may know more truth than the man who has won half a dozen victories. The man with the half dozen victories knows a half dozen truths, while the man with a score of defeats may know 20 truths. Dare to be convinced. You must allow the subconscious mind to create your desires into actuality. If you desire money, let it be an assurance, a conviction that the law must resolve. Then without doubt the money will be yours. This of course does not mean that the attaining of the money is necessarily good. It may be, on the other hand, that the consequence of your having the money fills you with vanity and lust for power. That leads you into isolation and worry and the automatic attraction of the destroyers of your happiness. Now, this is by no means axiomatic. A great many people have attained wealth, prospered with it, done a great deal of good with it, and have been far better off through making it. Yet there have been just as many people to whom the attainment of money has meant the dissolution of family, the destruction of health, and complete disappearance of enjoyment of life and peace of mind. But if you want money, don't vacillate about it. Don't, on the one hand, complain that you do not have enough, and on the other, say that you don't care to have a lot. Seesaw goes the subconscious mind, and exactly nothing happens. You must dare to be convinced on whatever it is that shapes up as a problem to you. Dare to make a decision. Take a side. Be convinced. Let the decision manifest itself in actuality. Then shirk neither from the reward nor punishment. For if you err, there is no one, nothing, that will hold you to account except the law of cause and effect, a strictly impersonal operating law, and once the consequence of the error has come upon you, you need have no fear that any others will be visited unless you create them yourself. For if you carry from some error shame and remorse and chastisement, these must act on the subconscious mind to create themselves in reality. One bright day, a young man starts out to open a business. At first, things progress favorably, but in final consequence of wrong thinking, his business goes bankrupt. Wrong conception or error carries only one consequence, and the day this young man's business goes bankrupt, that consequence is brought home to him. But now is when he may make the greatest error of all. If he takes stock of what he has learned, discovers and recounts the errors in his thought, arrives at truth through examination of his error, then boldly strikes out once again, he is using the great powers of the universe as they must be used, and success will surely come to him. But if his error builds shame and remorse and self-pity, he will suffer added consequence, as long as he carries these illusions with him, for they will continue to develop in his life as long as he thinks them into the subconscious mind. Man makes circumstance. Now, it must be thoroughly understood that we are not denying the existence of evil. We are simply denying the reality of evil, naming it illusion as it surely is. No great man or woman has ever lived who has not risen above circumstance, literally denying the reality of lack, limitation, illness, poverty, and inferiority. If you allow yourself to be a product of circumstance, then each encounter you make with evil will convince you of the reality of evil, and further evil will be created in your experience. Moreover, you will make despair and fear and unhappiness your constant companions. Don't think for a single minute that circumstance makes the man. Man makes the circumstance. Through the law of attraction, all things come to him who believes in them, and every circumstance of your life inevitably has been attracted to you by your own beliefs. You are literally a product of your own thought. You are what you think, only that and nothing more. You must right now convince yourself that evil is an effect, not a cause. Evil is the result of erroneous thought conception. Erroneous thought conception is the cause of evil. Evil is a circumstance, and you, as a divine part of the universal intelligence, need never be the result of circumstance. You create the circumstance. Only when you believe circumstance to be greater than you are, will you allow it to continue to develop evil in your experience. Man-made law versus spiritual law. All moral and ethical laws are aimed at the general welfare of the human race as a whole. In other words, moral and ethical laws are designed as race preservatives. Since the first law of individuals or groups is self-preservation, there can be no doubt but what the evolution of all moral and ethical law is consistent with the spiritual laws of the universe. This, of course, does not mean that moral and ethical laws shall not err, nor that they shall not, on occasion, promote evil, for all form, and man-made laws are no more than form, is but a temporal manifestation of thought, and must change as thought changes. Consequently, we have the great evolution of human society from tribes of warring nomads to our gigantic cultures of today. where we dwell in relative peace with the main aim, creation rather than destruction. It is interesting to note that the plan of ethical and moral laws is essentially the same as the construction of the laws of the spirit. They are both designed as true law, simply cause and effect. Break a law of society and society will punish you for the transgression by imprisonment, by ostracism, by financial penalty, by retracting certain rights within the group. Whatever evil circumstance the individual creates in his breaking of the law attempts to visit on him in return. Though the original basis of this law was laid on considerations of moral and ethical right and wrong, once the law is broken, there is started a chain of events that moves without any consideration other than cause and effect, and moves inexorably to its conclusion. Of course, because the laws of society are man-made, it sometimes happens that the lawbreaker escapes society's punishment for some time. Not so with the laws of the spirit. These laws work without the chance of error, and he who thinks evil creates evil, and he who sends out evil will find evil returning home once again. Moral law, therefore, is simply the effort of mankind to lay down rules of conduct which aim at eradicating error from society. Similarly, the laws of the spirit can be understood in such a manner and with such enlightenment as to eliminate error from the individual life. The prompters at work. It is strange how often we recognize right from wrong, and how often we follow in the path of the wrong, almost as if we desired evil. Scarcely a person lives who has not on some occasion performed some miserable act or deed in which he could not seem to help himself, as if some magnet lured him onward, as if in the performance of this wrong he found a secret martyred delight. It has been convenient for society to propound that this only proves that the devil lives side by side with God, and that evil is a thing in itself, a temptation tossed in the pathway of the righteous and the sinner alike. Let us not be led astray by this type of abstruse thinking. God and the devil did not jointly author mankind. Obviously, one or the other did, since the possibility of their taking up such a joint enterprise defies all rationality. If the devil made man, then God could not exist in man. Neither could good, and all would be evil. Since evil is error, all life would be error. And as a consequence, everything would be chaos, without design, without form. If God made man, then man is essentially good, but being free is likely to fall into error in his search for truth. Isn't this mankind as we see it today? The devil is as illusory as evil. He does not exist in reality, neither do his fires. What men have always thought to be the work of the devil, we can in this age say, with certainty, is little else than the remembrance by the subconscious mind of those pain experiences which have been rejected by the conscious mind. The power of the word. Perhaps from the previous chapter you've been able to elicit sufficient understanding of the prompters that exist in your subconscious so as to make apparent the problem we are faced with now. The attraction of evil, limitation, lack, disease, poverty. Can 1,000-fold more be laid to the insidious prompters than to any error honestly made in the search for truth? Today you may be walking around with a subconscious full of prompters that would have you be sick, would have you be poor, would have you be lonely and unsuccessful. You must control these prompters or they will control you. You must, by conscious meditation on the spiritual laws of the universe, install in the subconscious a conditioned response for good which will automatically displace all negative prompters. You must do this, or there is not the slightest possibility of the full and good life. You cannot expect evil without creating evil. After having performed meditation, there no longer can be any doubt in your mind but what speaking the word means, activating some power to create the conditions you desire. The word or the thought, since time immemorial, has been the first step in all creation, all achievement, all desire. The power of the word or thought is such that nothing will stand against it as long as it is spoken with conviction. The subconscious mind is a brilliant deductive reasoner. In fact, there is valid reason to assume that deductively the subconscious mind reasons perfectly. Given a premise like, I will make money, it can produce a series of brilliant logical steps for the accomplishment of the same. For example, under deep hypnosis, a patient was informed that he was in discussion with Plato, and from the subsequent discussion there evolved the most beautiful philosophical premises imaginable, as if they came directly from the mouth of the master himself. This discourse was far above the normal intelligence of the patient, and witnesses for some time believed that this young man had actually contacted the spirit of Plato. Everyone is prone to attribute all things beyond his immediate understanding to the realm of ghosts and banshees and shades and shadows. But let there be no doubt, the subconscious mind has as its resources all the knowledge and wisdom there is, and all occultism is simply the use of the mind in which we all live and move and have our beings. You are never alone. In view of this intense discussion on evil and good and their creation in individual lives, you may be regarding the conflict between them as a battle necessitating your most valiant efforts. In other words, a great weight of tremendous effort may be settling on your shoulders as you think of the eternal sentinel you must stand at the bastions of your conscious mind to prevent the entrance of the forces of negative thinking. Similarly, since we are human and must err occasionally, you may be regarding future error with fear, thinking with indecision over courses of action. Let us dispel this thought once and for all. Let us first dispel it by assuring you that you're never alone. Responsibility for your slightest action never rests entirely with you. Were it up to you, all by yourself, you couldn't walk across the street, speak to a friend, or even be in existence. Mark this fact well. You didn't create yourself. You cannot by yourself do the slightest bit of creating. The power into which you project your thoughts is the only creative force there is, and it builds and constructs all forms and circumstance. But it does this according to how you think. Accept, don't will. Now, it is absolutely impossible for you to make this power do anything. You cannot by sheer force of will bend this power to suit your needs. You are not greater than God. You cannot either stop or start this power in its creating, for it is greater than you are, and it moves according to law. You cannot say, I'm going to make money, with all the determination and ferociousness you can muster, and expect that you are creating in your experience anything other than belligerence and opposition. You've got to accept, not demand. You can't will anything. This does not mean a doctrine of resignation, far from it. It simply means that you recognize that it is not you who does the creating. It is a power greater than you. This power creates what you believe and manifests to you what you are prepared to accept. Be sure you understand this. All your will for money will avail you nothing, for that is the wrong use of spiritual law. Money will be created in your experience only if you realize and know that there is abundance all about you and you accept it. In other words, you don't demand money, you don't force money with the idea that there is not enough to go around and you don't have enough of it. You accept money. There's a great abundance of it about you, and you know that. Therein lies the true use of spiritual law, as against the isolated exercising of the individual's will. For the force of your will against the universal mind must inevitably set up that same thing in your experience, so that you see opposition instead of cooperation. Accept and expect. Know and experience. Be positive and thankful, for the great laws of attraction and creation are laws of attunement, and never divulge their secrets to those who batter at the door with force. Who has not seen a child completely accepting all good with an open heart and a knowingness? Only the don'ts we fear conditioned adults impose on this godlike young mind ever set up conditioned can'ts, impossibles, lack and limitation. For the child accepts all good as a natural course of events, depends completely on all good being directed to it simply because of its desires. Accept, know and accept. Those are the secrets of all prayer and meditation. Guidance through attunement. It is important for you to know that even with thought, the entire responsibility need not rest with you. The power that creates is the power that knows, and it is possible, with perfect attunement, to achieve in each condition of your life a situation of guidance. Now, you cannot achieve attunement or guidance when you're consciously willing something to happen. The very idea of your will being imposed upon that of God's is indefensible from any kind of view. When you have completely accepted the power greater than you are, when you know it will create in your experience that which you believe, you will also find that it also will provide you with answers to your questions. You must do this by letting go of your problem. Once the basic elements of the problem are clearly defined in your conscious mind, and once your general objective is clearly defined in your conscious mind, let go. Forget the problem altogether. One morning while you're going about your daily tasks, you will find the answer. It will strike your consciousness with such impact as to remove all doubt. But what is the truth? The answer will be crystal clear, of such simplicity that you'll be amazed that it never occurred to you before or that you ever held any doubt about it. This is guidance. It is not achieved by any effort or will. It is achieved by confidence in the power greater than you are. It is achieved by complete acceptance of the power greater than you are. If you're able to effect this complete attunement every minute of every day of your life, there can be little doubt but what pain and lack and limitation and disease will never more exist in your experience. But we must caution you against raising your expectancies higher than your faith. If you say to yourself in the morning, I know I am working along the path of success, and go the rest of the day complaining about every obstacle you meet, you may wind up the week expecting that success should be yours, but it won't be. Your faith must be with you at least 51% of the time before it will manifest in your experience. But a manifestation will come one way or the other according to the predominant thought. So to briefly review, here are the points to remember. 1. Evil is error and it is illusion. 2. Good is truth and is reality. 3. Truth will dispel error, therefore good will dispel evil. 4. Evil is the result of man's thought, not God's. 5. Hell and the devil are illusions. 6. God does not destroy any human soul, for he does not destroy himself. 7. God knows everything, therefore is incapable of error or evil. 8. The single function of the subconscious mind or universal mind is to manifest into form or circumstance the seed of thought. 9. Man has complete freedom of choice in the kind of thoughts he wishes to plant in the garden of the subconscious mind. 10. No human being can assume the responsibility for a single thing other than his own thinking, for the universal subconscious mind does all creating. 11. Morality and ethics do not always follow the law of cause and effect, but the use of spiritual law always follows the law of cause and effect. This is because moral law is man-made, while spiritual law is the essence of God. 12. The proper use of spiritual law is acceptance and faith. 13. You cannot demand anything from the universal subconscious mind by willing it to happen. 14. Guidance and inspiration in the paths of truth and achievement can be yours through faith and reliance in the power greater than you are. Strive for balance. You are now experimenting with the greatest force in nature. We caution you not to become so wrapped up in it that you forget your daily life. Do not search for contact with the subconscious mind to the exclusion of the exercise of the conscious mind, for as a human being, your goal must be to achieve perfect balance between the two. The ordinary people we meet each day scarcely use the subconscious mind at all, and their lives are directed and controlled entirely by circumstance. Men and women of genius are those in whom there is a perfect balance between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. It is balance we strive for, balance between the great creative power of the universal subconscious mind and the conscious mind. Work at your meditation joyfully and confidently. Cast aside all doubt and morbidity and effort and strain. You don't have to make anything. It is already made. You only want to use it correctly. Accept, believe, know, relax. The universe will provide you with all you desire. An experience with telepathy. As an interesting experiment with the power you are dealing with, gather a few friends together and conduct a session of telepathy. Join hands in a circle after one member of the circle has been blindfolded. In the center of the circle, place a pack of playing cards. At a given signal, expose one of the cards to the sight of all members of the circle, except the person who wears the blindfold. Be careful to expose only one card. Have all members of the circle concentrate on the exposed card and instruct the blindfolded person to report the card uppermost in his mind as soon as he has a clear picture of it. Let every member of the circle wear the blindfold in turn. Your results won't be perfect, but will prove to you beyond any doubt there is a mind or either a medium in which we all live and move and have our beings, and through which we may contact each other through nothing but thought. This is the universal subconscious mind. Our meditation following this is aimed at dispelling illusion or evil. When you have settled yourself for your meditation, recall to mind all those circumstances in your life which you consider to be error or evil. Say to yourself that they are simply illusion and do not exist in reality. Then commence with your meditation. Within a month, you will see some very startling changes. We shall become more and more specific with our meditations until one by one we have laid each ghost and demon that springs from the buried prompters in your subconscious, until your life opens to unlimited horizons and great adventure, until you see the universe as it really is, designed specifically for you. Know, accept, believe, keep faith. There are more things in this world than you have ever dreamed. Meditation. I know that I am one with the universal mind. I know this mind is perfect, and I may rely upon it for complete guidance in all of my daily affairs. This universal mind, this great subconscious mind, this mind of God knows no evil or limitation or lack. It simply creates in my experience that which I believe and accept. Therefore, I deny all evil and all error. When my eyes and my senses are deluded with the apparent circumstance of evil, I turn away, lifting my thoughts to the perfection and abundance and love of all the universe. I know that God does not create evil, and I know that by using the power of God, I'm able to deny evil, which is only illusion, simply error, and will not stand before truth. For the great reality is good, which is always attempting to manifest itself. I know that error or evil is the result of my own thought, is the result of error on my part, is the result of isolating myself from the power of the universal mind. I know that the universal mind is constantly creating in my experience that which I think, and if evil is manifested, it has come from my own thought, and my own thought may as quickly deny it. I do not will anything to happen, for I am not bigger than God. I simply understand that the law of creation is bigger than I am, and that I cannot help my thoughts and beliefs from becoming real in my experience. Therefore, I hold my thoughts steadfastly on the good. I do not do this with effort, as if I were commanding something to act. I simply relax in contemplation of the good, secure in the knowledge that everything rests with a power much greater than I am. I trust this power. I have complete faith and confidence in this power. I rely upon this power for guidance in all my daily affairs. I refuse to accept evil, and evil is gone. I accept good, and the supply and love of the universe are mine. And that is Illusion by U.S. Andersen. It's not a complicated teaching, but it's incredibly important. I have so many comments in my Facebook group, on YouTube, where people are talking about evil. It is very frustrating to read in spiritual communities about conspiracies that imply this ridiculous evil. It's coming from a deep teaching that we were given as kids, that there's this evil cabal or society or demons that are out there trying to affect you. You see this in every religion, almost as a tool of manipulation. It's very important to understand. What you see as evil is nothing more than a mistake. Evil comes back to itself. It is not created by God. There is no punishment that you're going to receive for being immoral except for the law of cause and effect, which is a punishment in itself. So much of the way we view the world is how we're taught as kids, or the way we're watching movies or TV, and we are constantly being told about this evil with horror movies and so many other things. And that's fun, that's entertainment. But you have to understand, there is not an evil that you are affected by. Yes, evil exists because men are creating this evil in their minds. But with faith, you can overcome any sort of evil. God is not punishing you. Any punishments that are happening are a result of you and your thoughts. This is a tough lesson to embrace. Taking responsibility for your thoughts. Now, there is an important aspect to this. It says that you cannot will something to happen. You can will something to happen if you're willing it through the God mind. But if you're doing it through your ego self, then you'll never be able to get what you want. It's an acknowledgement, an understanding of this power and a way of working with it that is powerful and effective. Go through your life and look at all of the things that you've had created in your life and see how your understandings of evil or Satan or the devil, see how all those things have affected your decisions, your actions, who you worship, what things you do on a regular basis. It is guiding you and affecting you. There is no evil except that's what's created by man. So create good. Create the light. Stop looking under the rug for some evil thing that's coming out to affect you. Take responsibility for your reality and make it the good that we all deserve to have. If we do this collectively, we can create an amazing world. I'd love to get your impressions of this chapter of this amazing book, 3 Magic Words by U.S. Andersen. I'd love to get your understandings and theories of illusion as it comes to evil and Satan. Don't let anybody tell you that Satan is coming to get you or there are evil demons that are haunting you. It's simply not true. Take control of your reality by using the universal mind and changing your belief system, and everything will happen. You can use this meditation at any time to reaffirm these beliefs and reprogram your beliefs if that's something that's affecting you. And if you're struggling in your life, if you're struggling with lack or poverty or disease, then look to see how the illusions of evil are affecting you. And perhaps this is the one key that will unlock the abundance and joy and happiness that is available to you from the great subconscious mind of the universe. All episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.